Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am here with a person that in many ways needs no introduction in our agricultural community, Dr. Jason Rowntree, who is the CS Mott Chair of Sustainable Agriculture and a professor in the Department of Animal Science. And Jason and I are going to have a great conversation about regenerative agriculture, what it means, how it benefits agriculture in Michigan and beyond, and what the opportunities for the future are. So, Jason, welcome.
Hey, great to be here, George. And it's been a long haul, you and I, man. I think I met you in '98, and so that's starting to add up a little bit. And I was kind of thinking about our career paths, and I would have never dreamed in '98 that you and I'd be talking now in 25, 26.
You and me both, Jason. I'm a little grayer than I was then. I got a little less
Me
hair than I
too.
had then, but I always knew that you were a faculty member in animal science that was really going to make a difference, and that's certainly proving true. You know, Jason, one of the things that really excites me as I talk with our industry leaders, our farmers, our ranchers, our growers in the state of Michigan about topics that are on their radar that of interest and they want to know more about and know how to apply in their operations. One of the most common themes is regenerative agriculture. So to start us off, for any of our listeners who are new to the concept, how do you define regenerative agriculture and what makes it distinct from current status quo or
Sure.
traditional farming practices or however you want to frame that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I get it often. Um, and to me, quite simply, regenerative agriculture is a mechanism of agriculture that is adopting soil health principles, not practices, George, but principles. And what I mean by those principles are, um, basically thinking about having less disruption in agriculture, greater biodiversity, getting animals back into cropping systems. One key thing that we can do well in here with our winter wheat is increasing perennialization throughout the year. We're keeping green things growing as long as we can in our annual systems. And so, some key themes though is that again, regenerative ag to me is outcome driven. It's about quantifying outcomes, and the point being is that we've gotten so driven with practices. Organic agriculture has often been practice driven. Sometimes in sustainable type situations, we say the same thing. But the beauty to me of regenerative ag is, hey, here are the tools in the toolbox. Your farm is different from every other farm, and farmer A may go about it completely different from farmer B, and neither of them are wrong. And it's about enhancing soil health, resilience, water cycling, and improving profitability, productivity, those things. And so often I see people, touting their ideas of regenerative ag and maybe buy my foo-foo dust or, these kind of things to be regenerative. And I just think that really this is about just trying to farm in a way that is improving resilience, soil health, and things like that. Whereas, you hear sustainable ag a lot, and sustaining is good, but to me, regenerating is better. It's improving the ecosystem, it's improving resilience as well as profitability over time.
Yeah, well, spot on, Jason. A lot to unpack there. And, you know, it really is all about the soil. And last Friday was World Soil Day, you know, and the soil's what it's all about. The soil's what it's all about for our farmers. It's key to their success. They know that, they appreciate that. They don't take it for granted, but they are looking for new tools and new strategies to help them build healthy soil that also allow them to make a living in the process. And a lot of that is what you talked about, what regenerative agriculture is about, outcomes. And I love the term foo-foo dust. I
Hmm.
use it all the time. We hear about it a lot.
Yeah.
There's it's not uncommon in agriculture that there's the quick fix on a lot of things. And sometimes things work, sometimes things don't.
Hmm.
And that is really a great example of why the land grant mission and the work that AgBioResearch does, not only in regenerative agriculture, but across all of agriculture, is important. We provide that objective, unbiased, science-based information that farmers, growers, and ranchers can then be exposed to through the work of MSU Extension, get it out in the countryside and let them make their own decisions.
Hmm.
But we're not trying to sell a product to anyone in the process.
Yeah, that's right. And no offense to anyone out there, but there are no silver bullets in this game.
Right.
And I just see the fact is that, profit equals income minus expense.
Hmm.
And often in agriculture, a majority of our profit is explained by our expenses and not our income.
Hmm.
And so often, these products have promises, not again to throw any stones, but the point is that one of the key things that we've got to do is keep our costs down in agriculture, especially in today and the inflationary challenges we've had and I just think getting down to the basics and working and trying to keep our ground covered better, to use less disruption, to reduce inputs, not get rid of them, are all things that we can do. Not only that, but man, the newest crop genetics and the newest opportunities that we're seeing that may or may not be considered regenerative, if you will, it's going to take a combination of technology and ecology to solve 21st century ag problems.
For sure. For sure. Jason, as I think back about your career and when you first got started in the regenerative agriculture field and how in some sense of the word it was taking a little bit of a risk
Hmm.
because you were scaling up a brand new program under a paradigm that's non-conventional, non-traditional, and had to build the support from your stakeholders. You had to
Hmm.
build the infrastructural support to do it, which you did successfully, and now it's a huge success. And that in itself is a really, really interesting story. But I want to pivot forward a little bit. The
Okay.
work is so important that I remember the discussions about how do we elevate the work
Hmm.
beyond just being Jason Rowntree's program, which
Yep.
is still the foundation, and now others are involved, and the work is expanded out beyond beef cattle. How do we elevate the work, create additional exposure, interest, and really accelerate the translation of the great research you do into impact? And that turned into the evolution of the Center for Regenerative Agriculture. So, talk a little bit about the center and that effort, its mission, and how it's really helping advance regenerative agriculture here in Michigan and beyond.
Um, Really great comment, George. And we started this probably what five years ago,
Mhm.
and um, I think amplification, right, is what the key word is how do we amplify effort and how do we amplify impact? And the fact is that I think we have to do it in a holistic, team-centered way. And as we started this approach, as we started the center, one thing that I had were a lot of contacts and a lot of resources and people I know in the industry. And we were coming out of the pandemic, and everybody was itching, I think, to get out of their house or to get out of their hometown. And so I don't know if you remember, but we hosted that meeting there here on campus, and we had like the who's who of agriculture, the who's who of supply chains come, and it was really an edifying experience. But the things that I learned from there is that when you get farmers and you get academics and you get supply chain folks all in a room, is we're often wanting the same things but speaking different languages. And resilience and sustainability may mean something different to a supply chain. In ag, it may mean something different. In academia, it may be something different. And so the key thing that I gained from a lot of our meetings is that we needed an opportunity, and we needed a collaboration, an organization to bring the entire supply chain together and to be able to work together shoulder to shoulder to collaborate, but to also learn and understand what the problems are up and down the supply chain. And that's really how the center started. My goal is to see every acre in this state under improved management, and I have some certain things that go along with that. That no farmer is left behind in regenerative ag. Well, you can be a small farmer, you can farm 10,000 acres, and the soil health principles apply no matter where you are. And we want to be led by principles. We talked about these soil health principles. You want to be led by principle, but driven to outcome. It isn't a check the box. It isn't like, oh, we did this, everything's great. And because farmers get there differently, and I don't care how they get there, but hey, if we can improve productivity, if we can improve resilience, all those things are there. And so where the center really fits is not only bringing the whole supply chain together and really trying to address challenges in agriculture, but simultaneously, how do we measure this? And how do we do it quantitatively? How do we do it accurately that we can yield the outcomes that we want for the future of our state and be able to report on them? And so we've spent tremendous amount of time working on, how do we more aptly, quantify soil health or soil organic carbon or water infiltration or yield. And so it's this beautiful collaboration that we have at MSU. As you know, Dr. Bruno Basso, Emily Huff Silver in forestry, Ian Olson, a supply chain rep, and many others that are now coming to the table to work in this space. That hey, it's a working lands approach, right? It's our timber, it's our agriculture lands, and how do we leave it in a place that's better for future generations? And so that's really where we're at. And as you know, I've been able to be very fortunate in bringing in considerable funds on the livestock grazing side, and we have a project, that's called 3M, where it's metrics, it's management, it's monitoring. And hey, what are the metrics that are driving ecological function, and what does it matter to a rancher? Why should a rancher care? Why should a farmer care? And we've been very successful in looking at the impacts of management. And truly, agriculture is the solution. It is, in my opinion, the solution to climate mitigation. We are standing on the solution in Michigan to protect our state for decades ahead when it comes to economics, when it comes to food security, when it comes to our environment and biodiversity.
Yeah, it's so exciting, the progress that the center has made and the future potential, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as this conversation goes on and in future podcasts. So you mentioned the importance of collaboration and coalitions and a lot of other partners being involved and at the table that we don't always think about in an academic setting. It's not just about our scientists going out and doing things. We are committed to making sure work is done that really makes a difference. And that requires collaboration with farmers. You mentioned folks on the supply chain side as well, that group of stakeholders. So talk a little bit more about under that theme and what role education, outreach, and these unique partnerships and collaboration will play in making regenerative practices more widely adopted. And are there challenges in getting people on board, and what's the best way to address them?
Yeah, and so and I think there's different layers to this onion, right? Like when we've got layers from the ag side, we've got layers from the supply chain side, and I think that if I can start with the supply chain and work backwards, that our supply chains, if I could go back 5-6 years ago, they were very interested in wanting to count. What is our CO2 equivalent? What does our emission look like? How do we lower that because we're making forward and outward pledges? And a lot of our conversations with large players in our supply chains would gravitate around that. And then all of a sudden, we had these issues with inflation, with trade, with continued drought, fire challenges with our climate, and it's kind of evolved from the supply chain piece into more of being about assured supply. And the reason I say that is, for example, I've had a great relationship with the world's largest restaurant with McDonald's for well over a decade, and then in their context, for example, they want to know what are the metrics in their supply chain they need to be focused on that helps them understand that they're going to get supply. Their beef is going to be there, their lettuce or tomatoes and other things. And so that's one example of how the center is interacting to try to help with those things. But working back to the farm, it's a very different set of challenges. It's a very different approach, and in that situation, it becomes about precision ag and understanding, hey, that we don't need to, an acre isn't necessarily the same acre everywhere on my farm, and how do we use technology to help lower fertilizer requirements, like the work that Dr. Abasso is doing. How do we work in the really great work that's evolving out of our long-term ag research program at KBS now that can look at challenges with say, hey, we're going to adopt no-till, we're going to adopt coverage. What are the yield lags that might be out there? What are the challenges that we have, right? And so in working in that role, I know this. Our supply chains are not backing away from regenerative ag. They're not backing away from pledges. They're not backing away from counting. So I see us in academia then is bridging this gap, working with our farmers to say, hey, these are the opportunities that you have to improve your income, to improve, the opportunity to have access to markets, things of that nature. And I can tell you in the beef world, which is where I'm really at, that so often farmers and ranchers are worried about, oh, well, they're wanting us to count methane, or they're going to try to shut us down. But most often, look, beef demand has not dropped. Even in these high prices, George, it's still maintained. So it's more a function of how can we improve productivity, lower emissions, and get paid for it. And that's where I really see these things headed, engaging with USDA and others. And I think that, I don't know if I peeled the onion out very well or not, but there's a lot of moving parts to this, and it's very exciting to see where it's headed.
Oh, you peeled the onion back, Jason. I'm very moved by your comments, but I'm not crying. So good
Oh,
job.
it's a sweet onion.
Yeah, sweet onion. Yeah, there you go. So many great points to talk about. And I think it really hits the nail on the head on the power of what the center brings to the table as well. Convening, bringing people together from multiple perspectives to have these conversations. And you're right, the folks on the supply chain side, they depend on resiliency in their supply chain and having access to product. And we see what happens. There's a lesson of the pandemic as one example that I'm not sure we fully learned. So it's exciting in my role trying to help facilitate the research enterprise on campus to see these new conversations being had with partners we weren't talking about before, and what the potential is, not just for discovery, but to lead to new opportunities for our farmers that are really going to make a difference on their farms and in their livelihood. So yeah, that's one of the things that really gets me excited about the Center for Regenerative Agriculture and this effort in your work. So
And I think too, George, I've never seen a farmer not want to take care of their ground. And um and the fact too, just some things that, farmers are stewards, and they've been generational stewards. Um and just some things out there, for example, I've learned is that, we are forced in ag by global standards, by national standards, to use certain formulas and metrics of quantifying impact, environmentally speaking, right? So, for example, I'm kind of locked into using international panel of climate change's formulas when I look at a carbon footprint of beef, IPCC tier 2, right? And I think our at Lake City Research Center, we've probably been measuring enteric methane in a grazing system as long as anybody in this nation, and probably have as robust of a data set as anyone. And the interesting thing that I've learned is that the cows don't read the books and they don't really care about these formulas. And the funny thing is that, we're locked into using these metrics based on national, things and guidelines. But, our work would suggest that our cows are emitting 17 to 25% less methane year over year than what the formulas say they should be doing. And so if you think about that and you think about a beef cattle pledge to lower your emissions by 30%, well, we might already be doing it if we use better math. And I think, again, that's where us and academia and us as researchers can bring that knowledge to the table, because very few entities have this longitudinal data that spans now well over a decade to be able to have these conversations and say, hey, it isn't the cow, it's the how. It's the management, it's the improvement of forage quality and what we're doing. And it's been so great for me. We're monitoring on like close to 50 farms in Michigan and grazing land systems. And just to see the adoption of improved grazing management across these sites throughout Michigan over, I've been here 16 years, has been the most edifying thing in my career. And just, I learn more from our farmers than they learn from me often, right? And the fact is that our farmers are really, they're walking the walk in this state. And I also see it in our crop farmers as well. And so I think that's another thing to say is that, hey, can we do better? Absolutely. But at the same time, I really see us doing a good job in this state right now.
Yeah, boy, Jason, I really love that saying. It's not the cows, it's the how. And I've stolen that from you on occasion and
I've
used
stolen
it
it from somebody
when
else.
I'm
I don't
talking
know who.
publicly
Yeah.
about, issues with greenhouse gas
Yeah.
emissions and the quote role that cattle ruminants play
Mhm.
and whatnot. And it's really a great example of what the mission of ag bioresearch is, and something we are doubling down on, and that is being really focuses on communicating the real life impact of the
Mhm.
work our scientists like yourself and others do, and how it's making a difference for our farmers, our growers, or our ranchers in this case. And I love that example, and it really links directly to another question, which you kind of already answered, but maybe you've got some other examples you want to share. How does MSU translate data into practical recommendations for farmers? And can you share an example where research has directly changed farm management on the ground?
Sure. Um, so great question. I'm going to come at it more from a pasture centric approach than perhaps cropland. But one thing that, Dr. Matt Raven, who's my good retired friend, and I, over 10 years ago, we worked with the Savory Institute to create what's called the ecological outcome verification. And it is a applied monitoring strategy that we work with farmers on in the state and elsewhere, to understand how their management is affecting the ecology of that system. We think about the energy cycle, we think about water cycle, we think about our minerals, and we think about biodiversity. And early on, Matt and I, started that work. We have gone all over the world teaching it. And what we've seen over time in monitoring is so many of these, what I'm going to call leading indicators of ecological change, are improving. And they're improving in terms of how our minerals are cycling. So many of the farmers that I work with now through these systems have been able to lower the amount of nitrogen that they're using, maybe not getting rid of it, but definitely lowering it, right? And and the fact is that those metrics are perhaps in the science world, George, they might be a little more qualitative, if you will. They may be not the most rigid, quantifiable numbers in the world, but the numbers that we look at, they matter to farmers. And the farmers want to know what's happening with the biodiversity of their pastured systems, what's happening with pollinators, those kinds of metrics really matter. Now, um, are they under the most rigid scientifically correct conditions? No, but that really doesn't matter. There's a place for that, but when we're on like the for me, the laboratory is our farms, right? That is my own living laboratory, and I've just seen those metrics really affect how farmers make decisions. We're on multiple million acres globally, and again, the Savory Institute has been the leader in that. We just help scientifically, but not long ago, I was cruising down the road listening to Sirius XM Farm Radio, and there was a guy from New Zealand, that was on there, and they also had farms in California, and it was about regenerative ag. And the guy on the radio asked him, he said, "Well, how are y'all measuring, these things at your farm?" And he says, "Well, we're using the ecological outcome verification." And so it was really cool to be just, cruising down the radio, and some dude in New Zealand is talking about a method that that our center and that others at
Awesome.
MSU help form, right? And so what we're learning now, is that the metrics that matter, like we keep focusing on that metrics, management, and monitoring, those things are so important. And where I believe the center brings a lot of opportunity and where we can make impact is that the metrics at the farm might be different than the metrics that matter to a supply chain sometimes, right? So we can create metrics, and often these are leading indicators of ecological change that we use at a farm, but we also use lagging indicators, which may take longer to quantify, like soil organic carbon or water infiltration or other things like that, water cycling, that we can measure over long periods of time and really try to fit the bill across there. And that's where I see the strength of our center, and understanding that some of these take a lot of time, others can change quickly, and understanding that we can't apply each metric everywhere is where the nuance comes in. And I believe what we can provide academically to the whole supply chain there.
Super. So talking about impact, it's all about the farmers. It's all focused on new tools, new technologies, new management practices that can help their bottom line on farm. But another area of potential impact is on the policy side. So how can the center's findings inform state or national agricultural policies? And how might that benefit Michigan's farming sector and the food supply chain at large?
The the P word had to come up, huh?
Well, you've
And
had some experience in DC in that regard, so maybe share your experience.
yeah, and number one, I always want to believe that the folks that make decisions on policy are well intentioned.
Mhm.
And I have I've given testimony, as you know, to the Senate Committee for Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. I've engaged Senator Stabenow and her staff for many years, and look forward to and continue to work with Senator Slotkin and others. And the key, I think, is that it's education, and it's understanding that the challenges that we have in agriculture, in these conflicts, perhaps with the words we use, like regenerative or other things, there is no intention in making these politicized. It is about bringing solutions to the table that will feed ourselves and will feed others, and maintain the United States, in my opinion, stronghold on being the main food producers of our world, right? And so it's key that when you sit down and you talk to policymakers, that this isn't about politics. It's about economics, it's about resilience, and it's about food security. And so in that context, having engaged those, I'm very hopeful. I'm serving on our USDA, a USDA council, advisory council for carbon and greenhouse gases in agriculture. I'm hopeful that we'll get some things done there over time. But at the end of the day, when engaging policy, it's about being truthful. It's about knowing the science, and to say, hey, we are doing a good job in agriculture, But there are challenges ahead of us, and there are challenges that are out there. They can be driven by drought, they can be driven by flood, they can be driven by other things. Um, and here are tools in the toolbox that can help with that can protect us. Because I will tell you this, George, I've worked in Europe a lot, and I damn sure would rather be here than trying to farm in Europe right now. And no offense to anybody out there, but the amount of regulation, the amount of challenges that are continually stacked upon the farmers there, I very much question the long-term ability of these entities to feed themselves. And we don't want the United States to be that way. We want a free market. We want capitalism. We want these things. And so if I could say that, if we were to begin to work with policy to pivot, it would be, to me, to incentivize the outcomes that we want. And those are outcomes that do reflect ecological improvement, whether it be, improve carbon, improve water, and other things. And I long term kind of see us spinning that way. And the reason I do is multiple fold. I think insurance will begin to more aptly dictate improved productivity. The other thing is regardless if we like it or not, there's more and more investment groups that are in the land business, that are in the farming business. And I believe these investment groups, they are responsible for reporting to their funders. And those funders do want to see environmental improvement. They want to see these things. And so as this evolves, and we do see these kind of large global interests in agriculture, whether you like it or not, I think there is going to be greater accountability long term. And that's where, to me, let's skate to where the puck's headed, right? And get ahead of this and be proactive. And again, hey, our farmers are the solution. And I think that's where we can work with our policymakers and more aptly understanding that. It's great to just think about the U.S., but food systems are global in nature, and different countries have different guidelines. And so it's a complex world out there. I kind of said a lot in those few statements, but policy absolutely, in our engagement with our policymakers, is arguably the most important thing that we can do to provide a good future for our farming communities.
Yeah, Jason, not an easy question, but well put, my friend.
Okay,
Well put.
thanks.
The reason we do research is to benefit farmers, but another function of that research is to bring data and science-based solutions to the table to inform policy, so our policymakers can ultimately make the decisions. And regardless of the side of a political issue you're on, it's easy to get frustrated with those issues in the political process, but it's very, very important role of the land grant institutions and the work that our ag bioresearch scientists do to generate information that can have an impact on policy and provide potential alternatives, potential solutions that then our folks that are paid to make the decisions in DC or in Lansing
Mhm.
make those decisions. And I can't tell you how proud I am to have you have had the opportunity to testify in DC in front of that committee and talk about agriculture and your work. That's a great reflection on your reputation and the work you've done. And it's what it's all about. It's another indicator of what it's all about. So we've had a great conversation as we kind of wrap things up here. Thinking ahead 10 to 20 years, what do you envision, or what does the center envision as the biggest opportunities for regenerative agriculture in Michigan? And how is MSU positioning its research to support that bright future?
Great. Um, it's a great question, and I think the the drive that I've seen, George, in your work with ag bioresearch on this vision of resilience and in resilience for the future of agriculture. And resilience, to me, it means the ability to withstand, you know, pressure and challenges, whether they be economic, whether they be and or environmental, right? And where this deal's headed is, I spend time talking with a lot of the tech folks, and I get one lens, And I talk to some of my friends that are incredibly ecological, and I get that lens. Um, and at the end of the day, George, I think where the center can provide guidance, where our agriculture entity is headed, it is going to be where technology and ecology embrace each other. And the fact that the work that we're doing with remote sensing and Dr. Basso's yield stability mapping and modeling and all the new technology we're seeing coming with our farm implements and the way that we can combat weeds and other things is one part of it, right? But simultaneously, and of course, AI and machine learning and all those cool things that are evolving. But then again, um, you know, the ecology side, I think is equally important, and they can inform each other, right? And being sure that we're implementing these soil health principles and that we're protecting land, we're reducing or eliminating runoff. That's a huge part of it also, right? And where these marry together, I think is fantastic. I look at our dairy industry. I mean, we have so many opportunities with technology, whether it be with our digesters, whether it be with genetics and creating these dairy beef models that are I really see as the future of the upper Midwest in terms of beef productivity. But then likewise on the cropping side, right? And understanding that we can do things to improve the resilience of our of our cropping systems. And so you've got more resilient dairies. And I really think dairy is a key future for Michigan, right? And so all those brought together, I think is where this is headed. I know that we are going to see a lot of turnover in our farming community in terms of younger generations farming. And I think that understanding and what the impacts that we can make are going to be really tremendous. I'm personally absolutely excited about agriculture in Michigan. It wakes me up every day. The work from our rural communities. I've always come at this because I care about rural communities. I love urban communities too, and I know that MSU does great work in terms of urban farming and urban forestry and looking at food systems. I've just been a rural guy, and I love the work that we do at Lake City and being out in our rural communities and Chatham, and you look at where all of our AgBioResearch centers are, and to me, agriculture is the lifeblood of those communities. You look at the multiplier impacts and the impact that agriculture has on our rural economies. And I just want to see people happy and healthy and resilient. And that's really where I see this, and it's empowering our rural communities and really trying to regenerate and to, just see them thrive for future generations to come.
Right on, Jason. Right on. Listeners of these podcasts have heard me say this previously, but I sincerely believe I have the best job on campus. And the reason I have the best job on campus, and you may debate that with me, but we'll save that for another time. You may think you have the best job on campus. It's because of the partnerships. It's the opportunity to work with talented faculty like yourself that are really committed to doing work that makes a difference for agriculture and the lives and livelihoods of people in the state. It's working with our partners in the agriculture industries who are vested in the work we
Right.
do and recognize we were in this together and co-creating what those needs are and opportunities are for the future and how we best address those. And the partnerships in the state of Michigan, they do not happen in other states. And
No.
it's something that makes me proud. It's something I know our faculty are proud of, and it's something our stakeholders are proud of. And the best is yet to come. So it's fun to think about the future of the center and the impacts 10 or 20 years from now. And I look forward to doing another podcast with you then where we can look back and talk about all the great things that have happened.
Well, George, it's an honor to chat with you, and really enjoyed it. And so, thank you for all your leadership. And if I could just say one thing as we also close is that, and I may not have hit it like I could have better, but I really see the Michigan commodity groups that I've had a lot of interest, in time in working with, also being so important to what we do, and want to thank them for the support that they've given us, whether it be through the research we do, through MAAA or Project Green or other things. I mean, if it wasn't for MAAA, George, my career would not have taken the route it did, right? And so I think just a big thank you to all the support that we've had from our stakeholders, because I definitely wouldn't have been able to do what I do if it wasn't for them. So,
Right on, Jason. And that story of MAAA is another big success story, directly linked to, growth of your program and what you've been able to accomplish. So I really appreciate you mentioning that. So, all right, Jason, thanks a lot. We look forward
all
to
right.
visiting with you again in the
Thank you.
future.